am so excited for today's episode. This is a special edition of Talk Goalie to Me because we're turning the tables. My guest is also today's host as we dive into my story. Edina native Ann Carroll grew up in a hockey household and went on to build a 20-year career in sports television broadcasting. She's a Fox Sports North alum, and you may remember her work as a 3-time Emmy Award-winning host of Vikings Weekly. She's excited to be back behind the mic today, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have her leading the conversation. Let's get into it.
So, Olivia, we are going to start with a fun question of the day. And my question for you, you are quite the fashionista. So I want to know, and perhaps the listeners want to know, your favorite place to shop in the Twin Cities, your go-to spot.
I would say if I had unlimited money,
Yes.
it would be Bumbershoot in Edina at 50th and France.
Wow.
If I had unlimited money.
Sounds like a sponsor opportunity.
I know, but I do like Ever Eve.
Another sponsor opportunity.
So lots of Minnesota places. I often try to shop at like boutiques or a lot of Minnesota owned places just because I feel like I can find unique things there that also are, able to be worn here in the winter. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are my two like go-to places in Minnesota.
How would you describe your style?
Oh, goodness. I would describe my style like Western eclectic. That is what I really like. I'm usually in like a pointed toe often. I really like fur. And, sometimes I'll wear some patterns. It just depends. But I always like a big belt. Yes. So I love the game day fits, the walk-in fits. Those were always my favorite when I was playing.
Yes.
And it's really funny because, sometimes when I do show up to the rink with like Youth Hockey Hub and stuff, we'll do fun game day walk-ins now because that was always what I was known for in college. So I really like those. Those are pretty silly.
And where do you think you get that inspiration for Western wear? Not a big thing here in Minnesota. That answer surprises me a little bit. Where do you think you get that inspiration from?
Honestly, that's a great question. I feel like I grew up in the middle of nowhere, like in a very, very small town. And so I was always like a little bit country growing up, like more of a hick almost kind of girl. Grew up always a very tomboy. Mm-hmm. And so I think when I really started to find my style in college, it was just something I kind of gravitated towards was the cowgirl boots and the hats. I love hats wearing hats when I dress up. And so it just kind of came natural. Goalies, welcome to the Talk Goalie to Me podcast, where we spill all the behind the mask tea with goalies, talk gear that actually works, and hear the crazy stories only goalies can tell. Big shout out to General Sports, where you can get your pads, mask, and everything in between totally dialed in. All right, let's kick things off.
Talk Goalie to Me is hosted by Minnesota native Olivia King. Olivia King played 6 Division I seasons between the pipes for both the Golden Gophers and the St. Thomas Tommies. She began her goaltending career in Brainerd, Minnesota, taking her high school team to the Minnesota State High School Hockey Tournament twice. Today, she's molding young goaltenders, coaching at both the youth and high school level, both boys and girls, while also chatting with some of the most well-known hockey names across the country. So get comfy and listen in for today's episode of Talk Goalie to Me. Here's Olivia King.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much, Ann, for being here today. It's so funny that we found ourselves here after Steve's podcast last week.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here, and that's kind of how this all came to be. Olivia, it's been a long time since I've been behind the microphone, so happy to be here, but that's quite a story on how this all came to be.
I know. I love it. I'm so grateful for you. And you initially reached out to me.
Yes.
Which was over social media. So it's so nice to be able to learn from you. And you have so much knowledge, obviously, about the industry and just about sports reporting in general. So I'm very lucky to have you on. And especially for today is a little bit of a special episode.
Yes. Well, I knew that Steve would be a good guest for your goalie podcast when I started to kind of follow you, and I always kind of keep track of what's going on in media. Once a media person, always a media person. You figure out what's going on, especially locally, and I've just been really impressed with what you've been doing. And then I realized you've got a goalie podcast, and I thought, I've got a good guest for you. And I thought my brother Steve would be a really good guest. He comes from the coaching background and the goalie camp and his own credibility as a goalie, and I thought this would be a really great guest. So that's how this came to be. I reached out and I said, I've got a good guest idea for you. And you bit, and Steve came, and I came with, and we met, and kind of just gone from there to understand what kind of role you're taking on here on the pod, but also your ideas of a media career and the things that you've been able to do, and just recognize that, you're just in the beginning, and the world is out there, Olivia, and you've got so much to offer. And we thought, you know what? It's time for your listeners to know who Olivia is, what she brings to the table, and a little bit about your background. So we're turning the tables.
Yes, exactly. And I'm excited to share. I think, it's something I've never really shared my full story before.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited. I think it'll be a really fun day. So I appreciate you coming.
Yes. Well, let's get into it. Let's start the Olivia King story from the very beginning and bring that story to our listeners this week. And I'm so, again, happy to be here and able to get to know you a little bit better, as our listeners do as well. So Olivia began her career and began in up north. We say here in the Twin Cities, we say up north, raised in Garrison, Minnesota. Tell me how it came to be to get on the ice as a hockey player and growing up in Garrison.
Yeah, I grew up in obviously a very small town. I think, it was a town of 200, a fishing town. My parents, they owned a bait store my whole life. And ever since I can remember, I was always on the rink. I think I started playing hockey when I was 4 years old. My older brother played hockey, and that was kind of my draw to it. My dad was always a sports guy. He played football in college at Duluth, and he played high school hockey in Brainerd as well. And so, I think that was always the reason. I just wanted to play with my brother. Mm-hmm. And my dad would always build an outdoor rink at our house. And it was just really cute and special. It was something that brought our family together. That was what hockey was to us. And I really wasn't that interested in hockey, honestly. I as I kind of got older, it was something I did, but I wasn't really into it. We would play games, and my dad tells stories of me being on the other end of the ice doing snow angels and eating the snow, and like up until I was 9. Mm-hmm. I didn't really care that much about it. I liked to do it. I liked that my friends did it, but I wasn't a huge competitor. And I didn't really start being super into it until I started, we would rotate through who played goalie when I was in 10U. And I played goalie one time, and we lost like 8-0. And I left that game walking through the lobby, and all the parents in the lobby were like, "Good job, Kinger. You did so well. You did so amazing." And I got in the car with my dad, who's driving in the driver's seat, silent. And I'm in the back just chatting his ear off. That was the best game ever. That was so fun. And everybody said I did so well, even though we lost. And he finally was like, "You're not playing goalie. We're not doing that." And I was like, "I really want to. I really, really want to." And he took it as an opportunity, I think, to teach me a lesson, and was like, "Well, if you can show me the next, few years that you're the best skater, mm-hmm. then you can play goalie." And he thought that I would fall in love, I think, with being a forward once I started trying. But every single day I would ask him to play goalie for those next few years until he finally let me. He went to all the Play It Again sports in Minnesota, I think, to get me my setup. And he bought me a roller hockey helmet that we spray painted blue and sparkles in the garage. And then that's kind of how me playing goalie came to be. And Brainerd just happened to be the closest high school that we could get to. It was, oh my gosh, 5-minute drive to Brainerd High School every morning, but that was just the closest high school. It's the Brainerd Lakes area. You know, everyone who's in the area, that's where they go to high school. So that's how I ended up playing in Brainerd.
Well, there was a lot there, Olivia. I want to back it up because when you grow up with brothers, I know that firsthand. You want to do whatever they're doing. You want to be around them. You just want to be seen. So was it always hockey skates? Was there ever figure skates involved, or was it always hockey skates?
Yeah, you grew up with 6 brothers, so you know. Mm-hmm. No, it was always hockey.
Okay.
You know, I think it was because it was only boys.
Yeah.
You know, I had an older brother, I had a younger brother, and I had my dad, and there was never talk, you know, for a little bit there. I think I wanted to do like gymnastics and things like that, but my family just didn't know anything about any sport that wasn't like male dominated.
Right. You do what you know.
Exactly. So hockey, it was always hockey. And even now, people will ask me, how did you learn to skate? I really want to learn to skate. I really want to do this or that. And I can tell you I have no idea.
Right. You just went out on the rink, out on the lake every day. There's a rink in your backyard. I mean, your story is so reminiscent of so many people. It's the Minnesota story, right? You have a rink in your backyard. You had the brothers. You put on the skates and you just did it. No one taught you. You just did it. And it became part of the family obsession. It's just what you did. It was ingrained in you from the very beginning with that older brother and your younger brother and your dad. And it was spending time together as a family. And before you know it, you were between the pipes, even still wanted to stay there after giving up 8 goals, but you liked how that felt. You liked being like the last line of defense. You liked the pressure. What was it about being a goalie, even at 10 years old, that you begged Dad about? Do you think that drew you to it?
I think, especially as a kid, I was definitely a little bit, you know, attention seeking. Everybody as a kid, you kind of like that. And so I loved the fact that I was like the quarterback.
Okay.
Especially in youth sports in high school and younger, goalies really can change the course of a game. And so I just wanted to be in charge of the game. I wanted to, you know, be able to make a big, big difference. And, you know, whether that be good or bad, I think in the younger ages, goalies do get lots of attention because you get a lot of opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then as I got older and went through high school and stuff, it was for different reasons. I loved goalie because it was very unique and you can have your own style and play goalie, and no 2 goalies are the same, which I absolutely loved, you know, and that's anything from gear to how you actually play the game. And once I got to be a senior, I mean, I definitely started developing my own style, but before that I was very cookie cutter and I would do things. You know, I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted my movement to be perfect. I wanted, you know, all this stuff. And then by the time I got to be a senior, I had the boys team. My dad helped coach the boys varsity football and hockey team in Brainerd. And for a little while, the boys team had a goalie coach, Chico Rush, who is a legend goalie. And he played for the New Jersey Devils, and he still does color for the New Jersey Devils, and he's just absolute legend. But he came back, and he lived in Brainerd for a little while, and he was their goalie coach, and I remember we had a conversation, and I was just a high school girl, and didn't really even know. I knew Chico, obviously, but I didn't really know his credibility that much yet, you know, until, you know, now I really do. And we had a conversation in the lobby, and he had watched one of my games prior, and he goes, Olivia, like, I think I see a lot of potential in you, but I want to see your personality when you play goalie. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And now that I coach, I really, really do. When I watch a kid play, I don't want to see cookie cutter. I really want to see their compete level and their personality come through in their style of goaltending. And that's what makes someone really, really good. When you can really see that just by watching them, and not even by knowing them or talking to them, you can see how much they really love it and how much they care and how much they are bought in to it and their team.
Yeah. And
that's what made me fall in love really with goalie and hockey. And, you're just an integral part of your team, and how you play affects everyone, and being able to work on your consistency through that, I think that also helps you be able to work on your mental game and work on your consistency with the mental side of sport, which draws into your everyday life.
Absolutely.
You as a consistent teammate, well, then you can be a consistent family member and a consistent friend. And those are the things that are most important.
Absolutely.
So
you started playing goalie full time at what age? After the 10 you've seen and Dad said, go be a good skater, which you worked on, because any goalie coach, any goalie expert will tell you the best goalies are the best skaters. So you became a good skater. When did you go out for goalie or sign up for goalie in youth for the very first time full time?
Oh gosh, I think I was in 12U. So okay. I got moved up to play 12U a year early. And then out of 12U, I got moved up to play varsity.
Wow.
A year early. So I was playing varsity in 8th grade, which is so funny. I talk to people about my story now, and they're like, that's amazing. Like, that is so cool. I'm like, keep in mind, this isn't Edina.
Right.
This is Brainerd. There's not very many. We didn't have very many goalies.
Right.
We didn't even have, my 8th grade year, we didn't even have enough people for a JV team. So in theory,
they needed a goalie.
Exactly. They needed
volunteer.
Yes, they needed a goalie, and I think I was lucky enough that I was in a position where I was able to move up and start playing varsity very early, which taught me a lot of lessons. My first varsity start, I was in 8th grade, and I was shocked. And it was an away game. My first shot was a goal, which my dad will never, ever let me live down. It is like the running joke in our family, but just a funny start to my career. And it was really good. It was a really good learning curve. I mean, my 8th grade year of high school, we were below 500. We were not a very good team. And every single year, as I grew older in high school, we got so much better, which was awesome to be a part of a team that was really growing something. And by the time I was a senior, we were in the state championship game. Mm-hmm. So that was super, super cool and really awesome to be a part of something like that.
So as you're playing varsity hockey as an 8th grader and you're learning how to practice as a goalie, what are the things that you did specifically? Because, again, any goalie coach, any youth hockey coach, any hockey coach will tell you, what do we do with the goalies? How do we integrate them into the practice? How do we pay attention to them? How do we make them a better goalie while not just being, the shootout person at the end of the practice or whatever? What did you do as you look back? What were the things that you were doing that were helping you get better every day? Because game day is one thing, but it's practice. You got to tell a kid it's practice, right? So what were you doing as you look back at the things that made you better, whether it was becoming a better skater, developing your style, mental aspect? What was it that you can share that you think you did in those practices every day that made you better?
It is funny because I was always a gamer. I was so much better in a game than I was in practice. And practice was something I really had to work on because I would get super distracted, especially as a young kid. I'd have really bad days and then I'd have really good games. I was just very inconsistent. And what helped me a lot was I had a goalie coach in high school who was there every day, Toby Cavalibog, and he was amazing. I mean, what a gift it was in high school to be able to have someone there every day who was willing to work with me before practice, after practice, come early, stay late, always the first one on, last one off. And I attribute a lot of my success to him being there because he was really hard on me, but it was exactly what I needed. And it definitely got me to where I am today. And we worked every day. And a lot of kids, they don't get that. They don't get a goalie coach every day in high school especially. And so that was definitely the reason that, I was able to every year get a little bit better.
Absolutely. What a gift to have that opportunity. Like you said, not a lot of associations, not a lot of high school teams. It's probably getting more and more every day. Realizing the value of keeping your goalies busy in practice, giving them something to do to make them better. But what an awesome opportunity for you. And that's such a good answer. You had a goalie coach, but not everybody does. So the things that you learned from that goalie coach made you better every day. Fast forward, Brainerd girls hockey is making their very first state tournament appearance in 2008, your junior year. Tell me about that first tournament appearance, because every single kid, boy or girl, dreams of a state tournament berth, a chance to go to St. Paul. So for Brainerd, in your small town, to take the girls there, what was that like? What a dream.
Oh my gosh. That was something we had been dreaming about since we were kids. And we were, I tell people now, we were one of the OG teams. I mean, we grew up playing together. All those girls, we'd known each other since we were babies. Like, we went to kindergarten together. We all went to middle school together. It was something that was so special. We finally, made it to the state tournament my junior year. And we were the first Brainerd team, boys or girls, high school, to ever go.
Good job.
It was so cool. And our whole community was there surrounding us. I mean, we left and there was a parade around the bus, and then
they closed the bank. They closed everything. Everyone's going to St. Paul.
Yes. And when we made it to, the X, I remember we played our first game, and there was so many people from our community there. And that just shows you how special the Minnesota State High School League is, and how special Northern hockey is. And it's something that I think for me becomes a little bit sad now that, people move around a lot in high school now, which was something that never was the trend. But we were like one of the last OGs where we just grew up together. We clicked, and we just had, the natural, 10-year cycle where a small team will have 2 good years, 3 good years. And then there's just natural turnover where it'll take a few more years for there to be, a good group again. And so that's all it was. And it was so cool and so special. And so for me, I played every single game until my junior year. Mm-hmm. And my junior year was really, really hard for me at home. And that year, I really struggled as a goalie. My individual performance was just very, very inconsistent. I was back and forth. I'd have one really good game and 2 awful games. That's kind of how it seemed to go. And that was, a lot attributed to what I had going on at home at the time. My mom, she really was struggling with substance abuse. And then my dad, he was, he had owned a family-owned business, and he was coaching boys hockey and boys football. So it was just a lot going on.
Right. We're going to talk a little bit about that, because it really did affect not only how you played at goalie. There was a lot of distractions at home, and that's something maybe you haven't shared very often, is that part of your story. And it's been instrumental so far, and it will continue to be. And you mentioned your dad and your brothers, but you mentioned your mom, and that's where the challenges at home came in. Tell me a little bit about your mom and the things she was dealing with, and how that did affect you growing up. Not only affect you, but your brothers and your dad, and kind of the dynamics at home, and the dynamics in the community too, because playing on a high school varsity team, spotlight's on you, the spotlight's on dad as the coach, and here in the King household, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot going on, and I was just, when you're so young, you're very consumed with what you're doing and all of what you want, and all my dreams and aspirations were hockey. I wanted to play college hockey. I put a lot of pressure on that. And then when everything at home started happening, my mom was just in and out of rehab facilities, and I just didn't want to tell anyone because I was embarrassed. And I remember I would often tell people, oh, she's on vacation or things like that when they would ask. And I didn't tell anyone for a long time, for months and months and months. And that was just, attributed to something that was, not my fault and something I couldn't control. But it was affecting me a lot on and off the ice in school and, and at the rink. And, I give my dad a lot of props for, being the one to kind of stand tall in our household and tell us that it was going to be okay. We were going to get through it and everything. But my junior year was really hard. And when I lost my starting spot, I think that was something that was just like, at the time, it was just, why would this happen to me? I was all poor me. Mm-hmm. And it taught me a really good lesson about, things aren't perfect and everybody goes through something. And that is why I choose now to do what I do, because I love giving people a platform to tell their story because it might help somebody else. Right. When I was in high school, I just felt so alone, and that's why I didn't want to tell anyone. I was embarrassed. I didn't know how many other people could have been dealing with the same thing that I was dealing with, and in my head, that was no one. Nobody else has a family member who's dealing with substance abuse, and nobody else, is growing up in a single-parent home, and nobody else is doing this or that. Well, that's just not true. And almost every family is dealing with substance abuse in some way. Right. And so I'm just very fortunate to, have had all the opportunities I did have and have all the amazing people in my corner that I've had who got me through that. Right. Because when I went into my senior year at Brainerd, I was dead set on not playing hockey. I had a very tough junior year, and I was ready to hang it up.
You were carrying a lot. You were carrying a lot of burden of secrecy and shame and a lot of what your family was going through. And as a girl, to not have your mom in a really formative part of your life, what was that like, knowing that, you're seeing your friends with their moms and you're getting ready for proms and those are your years. What was that like, and how did you handle that with not really having a mom present at the time because of her struggles?
I think the answer, especially at that time, I didn't handle it. I ignored it all. And moving into college, it was something that I started to deal with. And thankfully now, I'm very open about my story and what I went through, because I want everyone who has questions about it or is struggling with it to be able to have someone to talk to. And I feel like, I can be that person for some people, or at least an advocate for them to hear my story and understand, and not feel so alone, and understand that, life isn't perfect. And that's what makes it so amazing. Right. And when I was in high school, you talked about, me seeing my friends with their moms. It would make me so jealous. Yeah. At the time. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, I wish I had that. But now I see it, and it's just so sweet. And I do have such an amazing connection with my dad. We are so close. He is one of my best friends, and that is such a gift, yes, to have one parent that I can be very, very close to. And I always tell people he's 12 parents in one. Yes. He did everything for us, and he put, everything he could on the line to keep us, and that is very special. And he is the greatest gift in my life, to have, someone who's able and who was able to guide me when I was really, really struggling.
Yes, and he must be so, so proud of you. So you have done such amazing things. Not only was your dad a big part of your life, but there was someone in your life right before your senior year that you say saved your life.
Yes. So my high school coach, I was kind of dead set on not playing, like I said, my senior year. And he came up to me and we were chatting, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to play this year, kind of being a high school girl.
And nobody knows at this point in time.
No, nobody knows. And I'm sure he knew.
Yeah, he knew.
But I had never talked to him about it. And he was just saying, like, I know something's going on. I don't know what it is. But, you don't have to talk to me, but you do have to talk to someone. And he brought me to just the school therapist at school, who was actually one of my teammates at the time. It was her mom. And so she knew about hockey and she knew about the team, and we sat down and talked, and I talked to her for, oh my goodness, I don't know, 2.5 hours. She was like one of the first people who wasn't a family member who I had talked to about it. And it just felt like all the weight had been lifted off of me. And I told myself, I said, I'll play this senior year for my teammates, for fun. We'll go out there and we'll have fun. And I had always put so much pressure on myself to play college. And at that point, kids could get recruited in 8th grade. Girls could get recruited in 8th grade. So most, if not everyone who was going to go play college was already committed. And I wasn't being looked at. And I just said, I don't care anymore. I'm not going to play college. I'm just going to go out there and have fun. And at that point, I didn't even know if I was going to go to college. I had been struggling, not only on the ice, but in school too. And so I was just like, I don't care. We're just going to go and have fun. And that's what I did. And I individually and as a team, we had the best year that we had ever had up to that point. And, we went through that year. We won our holiday tournament in Edina. And then we had a great playoff run, and we went to the state tournament. We took second in the state tournament in, a few overtimes with Edina, and people still bring that tournament up to me, which is so special. Like, that just shows you how amazing, like, the Minnesota State High School League is. It's been years and years and years.
You will talk about the tournament for your whole life. I will tell you, you will talk about it forever. But the fact that you were able to guide your team to the tournament again in 2019, playing now with a complete weight off of your shoulder, you're playing free, you're playing to have fun. That was a big difference in your game, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it definitely was. And I think we just went that year and we just had fun. I had fun again playing hockey. I fell in love with it again. It wasn't a chore, and it wasn't something, that I would bring all my daily struggles to. I think that's the best message for everyone to receive. It's whenever I got on the ice, my real life just went out the window. Mm-hmm. It was all about me playing hockey that day.
You hear that story in sports across the landscape of sports. It doesn't have to be hockey. It can be so many kids carrying so much from home, and sports is their outlet, right? It's a tale as old as time. And you were able to do that in Goalie at Brainerd, take the team to the state high school hockey tournament again. Let's talk about it, because we got to talk about it. You get there, and you're not going away quick. You get to the state title game, and what happens?
Yeah, so we had a really, really great tournament, and it's so funny. People will bring up scores to me and remember scores, and I don't even remember the scores of the games. I remember I had
But do you remember how it felt? That's probably what you remember.
Oh my gosh,
you
yes.
remember how it felt.
Yes, and I remember our entire community was there for the state championship game. It was absolutely insane, but it was so funny because we won our second game to head to the championship game, and I ripped my helmet off and threw my gloves when we won because it was that big of a deal. And everyone was like, why did you do that? That's only for the championship game. And I was like, I don't know. I was so excited. And it wasn't that I never thought we could do it, because we could. We had the talent. And it was just that we were a Northern team, and we were not expected to do that. And so when we went into that championship game with Edina, we expected to win. Everyone, we were the underdogs in everyone's eyes, but we were a really good team. And when we took them into overtime, everyone was so surprised, and we were not surprised at all. Yeah. And I remember after that game, I didn't cry. In none of the pictures I'm crying. I look so pissed. Because I was so angry.
Right.
Because I really felt like, we could have done it, and we were just as good of a team. And it was really cool because Edina's head coach, Sammy, who still is Edina's head coach, she came up to me after the game in the handshake line, and she stopped me and she said, that was one of the best performances I've ever seen from a goalie.
Wow.
And I was angry, obviously, but she's a legend, and I was just, now I can reflect on that and be like, that was really cool. She didn't have to say that.
Right.
She just won a state championship with her team.
Again.
Yeah. And she did not have to stop and say that and give me that moment
Right.
With her. And I think that's really cool. And those little things are really what I remember about high school sports. And I got out of that game, and I thought that was my last game of my career.
4-3 overtime final. You lose to Edina. Just to wrap up the other piece of the story, Mom is now out of the picture as a senior, and you have done your tournament run and celebrating with your team in a sense. Yes, you lost the game, but wow, what a run it was. And now what?
Exactly. And that's where I was. I was like, now what? And I think a lot of that tournament even, was a big, especially with my family and all that we had going on, it was a big win for us. What a cool thing to be able to do after all those years of really struggling and really being in the worst position that we, had felt like we could be in at that point. And so I think, I left that game and we did post-game interviews and stuff, just like they do in the big leagues. And
yeah,
I was like, this is my last day of hockey ever, and it sucks that we lost, and I'm angry, but this is really cool. It's really cool to be a part of a tournament like this. And we went back to the hotel, and we all hung out and ate pizza, and we were in the, just in the hotel rooms all night, just hanging out. And it really was such a gift. And that tournament was a big, like, if you don't want to be in my life, well, you're going to watch me. I was a high schooler. I was immature. And so that's kind of how I had felt like it. And, now I look back at that and I'm like, that was wrong. It was more of a win for our family because of how hard we worked to get to that point as a collective group. It wasn't just me. And, it was my whole team who was beside me, who knew my story. Mm-hmm. And then it was my whole family who was there at the games watching. And it's so cute. My younger brother he's much younger. He's, a freshman in college right now. So he was little at that point. He was in middle school. And my dad said during the championship game, he was sitting with my grandparents, and it got to overtime, and he was so nervous that he was just shaking, and he was crying. He had like tears in his eyes. My grandparents had to bring him to the bathroom because they just felt so bad, and he's probably going to die that I shared that. But he was just a little kid, and he was just nervous for me. And I think that just shows how close my family really is. Right. And just how cool that whole experience was for all of us. And then, I left that game, and I thought that was my last hockey game ever. And then I get, a call a few weeks later from, a few college coaches, and people were telling me, they were like, you're going to start getting calls, like you're going to play college hockey. And I was like, I don't believe you. It's too late.
It's not too late because, as we know, there are a lot of eyeballs on the Minnesota State High School Hockey Tournament, not only in the building, but across the region, really, and really across the country. Now, with all the entities, you can get that tournament. You can watch that tournament if you want to, no matter where you are. So there's a lot of eyeballs on that tournament. So, of course, they saw Olivia play. And at that point in time, you literally had no college plan. Nothing. Not even, I'm going to go to this school to study. There was nothing. Had you applied anywhere? Had you thought about it? Or was it the fact of there was so much going at home? I got to get that under, I got to deal with it. I got to, make sense of that. I've got my high school hockey season. I've got my school year. And that was all you could really take on.
I think it was a lot of that. And I felt at that point in time, I was like, I don't think it's right for me to leave. I almost felt guilty.
Got it.
if I leave, who's going to take care of my little brother, who's going to be at home. And, I think that was a lot of it. I thought maybe I would go play, go to college somewhere, maybe. But part of me was like, I could just stay here and go to community college at CLC in Brainerd. So I really didn't have a plan. I wasn't really thinking too much into it at that point. I was just kind of going with the flow.
You had a sense of responsibility. You felt like there was a part of you that became the mom to your little brother, and you took on that role a little bit at home. And so you can see where you didn't feel right, perhaps, in leaving.
Yeah.
But then the phone started to ring.
Yeah, and then I had gotten a few phone calls from college coaches, and it was very unexpected. And then I got a phone call from Joel Johnson, who is at the Gophers, and I remember...
And you remember where you were.
Yes, I tell people this story all the time. I was in the Target parking lot, and I was just sitting there, and everyone had been telling me, like, wait by the phone. Somebody really important is going to call you. Wait by the phone. Wait by the phone. And nobody would tell me who it was. And I was like, what is happening? This is so weird. And I had just assumed, like, maybe it was an award or something like that. I had no idea. And so the phone rings. I answer it. Hey, this is Joel Johnson with the Gophers. And oh my gosh, I've never felt that way in my whole life. And immediately I started crying. Immediately. And I put him on mute, and I'm like sitting there just crying. And he was like, hey, is this Olivia? Are you still there? And I got a phone. I was like, yes. Like, it's me. I'm here. And he was like, we would love to have you out for a visit. We can't promise you anything, but come for a visit. And so I said, absolutely. And it was one of the only visits that my dad went on me with. And we went.
Dad wasn't going to miss that visit.
No.
Even as a bulldog, a UMD bulldog, he wasn't going to miss that visit, right?
Exactly. And we visited the cities,
cities.
And we went on the visit, and we sat down at the end of the visit with all, Coach Frost and the whole staff. And they told me like it was. And they said, Kinger, you're going to come here. We have 3 goalies already. You're going to be our 4th goalie. We can't make you any promises. We'll promise you a spot on our team. And I left that meeting, and I think most people would have been discouraged to hear that. Like you're not going to play. That's just how it is here. But we can offer you a spot. And I walked out of that meeting with my dad, and we were walking to the car, and he's a very, very quiet man, very reserved, would always has let me make my own decisions. And he said, how do you feel? How did you feel about that? And I was like, Dad, this is where I'm going. I want to call them right now. I would have told them in that room that I was in. And he said, you'd be crazy not to. And it was just such a special day. And I remember...
It's almost as if as I look across, you almost get emotional even thinking about it now, today.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You can see it.
I still get emotional about it, because they were the one team that was willing to give me an opportunity and a chance and a home that nobody else was willing to do.
And they didn't even know half the story.
They didn't know anything about, about my family or about anything like that. They wanted me because they saw me play at the state tournament. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people had called them on my behalf, which, as I get older, I learn, who those people are. And that's very, very cool to learn how many calls that they really did get about me, which is super cool. And they were willing to take a chance on me too, because they didn't know me. Right. And they didn't need another goalie. They had 3 goalies. Nobody carries 4 goalies in college hockey. So, that was really, really cool. And I left, and I called them in the car on the way home. And I said, I'm in. I'm absolutely in. And I'm really excited. And I'm going to work so hard for you. You have no idea. And those next few weeks were just a whirlwind. I mean, I graduated like a week later.
Yeah.
I signed my, intent to go to the U midsummer. And it was really, really cool. And when I got to the U, it was just, the first month I was there, I was like, I don't fit in here. Because I was like, I'm just some northern girl that these girls don't know. And I was not very confident. I was like, I don't belong here. I was a late ad, and I remember the first few weeks were just really tough for me in practice. I mean, I'm practicing with Olympians. Mm-hmm. There's really good players out there, players who I looked up to, who I never, ever thought I'd be on the ice with.
I think that's interesting, too, because I think you get asked a lot, was the Gophers always the dream? Was that the dream? Look, it wasn't the dream for you because Dad played at UMD. You were a UMD family. You're Bulldogs all the way. And because those teams at the U were winning national championships over and over and over, and you're a girl goalie in Brainerd. Like, the dream wasn't even there. You didn't even dare to dream it.
Exactly. That's what I always tell people. Like, it must have been your dream to play for the Gophers. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I never thought that would be attainable. Right. Never in my life would I thought that I would be good enough or that they would look my way. So I never even, I never thought about it. And so when I got there, it was such a shock. I was like, this is another world. And, me coming from a very small town, I had always loved the cities. I was always a city girl. I always tried to be in the cities as much as I could as a kid. But, I never thought I'd live there. And so when I got here, I was like, oh, my gosh, this is a lot. And practice is hard. This is really hard. And my first few weeks, I remember I was at a practice. And at the end of practice, I'm sure I looked really defeated. And I was walking off, and Coach Frost, we had done this exercise, like a team building exercise, and we put in, it was like what we were most scared of. And I remember I wrote on the sheet 2 things. I wrote, and they didn't know about my family yet at that point either. I wrote, I'm scared that I'll get cut before my 4 years are up. And the second thing I wrote was about my family. And I was like, I'm scared that, I'll never forget my mom. And after that practice, Coach Frost grabbed me, and he's so funny. And he grabbed me, and it had been a few weeks since we had done that exercise. And he goes, Kinger, as long as I'm here, you will always have a home on our team. And he laughed, and that was all he said.
That's all I needed to say.
Exactly. And it was so, so special. And so for anybody who had ever asked me my 4 years, my undergrad at the U, why did you stay when you weren't playing? Oh my gosh, I could give you a million reasons. I would have never left. It was so cool to have a family and a community. And that was all that mattered to me. That was all that hockey really was to me. And so that was really cool and really special. And that coaching staff is awesome. And, I loved my time there and being a Gopher. And my first time in a Gopher jersey, my dad will tell you, like, I've seen my dad cry maybe twice in my whole life. And my first time in a Gopher jersey was an exhibition game. I was not going to play. I was redshirting that year. It was my freshman year. And after the game, I walked up, and I was, also the 4th goalie. So there was, like, no chance, and but I dressed. So that was awesome. And I came up after the game, and I was really, really excited. It was so fun to have gone through, like, a game day with my team. And my dad, he was, like, tearing up, and I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm happy and excited. And he was just like, everything our family has been through was worth it to see you in that jersey. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, like, how cool is that?
And as the tears come now for you, and what Coach Frost did for you, how did that, along with the girls, what were the girls like, too, in that moment? Because now it was probably pretty known where Olivia was coming from. And Coach Frost did that because he could and he wanted to, from a place that had nothing to do with hockey. And obviously the tears tell me what that meant to you what he did, but the girls and that moment with your dad. There's a reason he teared up too, and the reason you're tearing up now. It's just so instrumental in your path and what people can do for each other. How is this making you feel right now as you reflect on it and you think about it and you know now more 6 years later that he didn't have to do that and he did it because it was the right thing to do?
Yeah, I think it's so special to reflect on my career because there were so many moments in my career that I thought it was over. It was over for me. Hockey was done. And that's what's really cool. I was always going on borrowed time. My senior year of high school, that was borrowed time I didn't think I'd play. My whole undergrad, that was borrowed time that I didn't think I'd play. My master's degree at St. Thomas that year, I didn't think I'd ever get my master's. I didn't even think I'd get my undergrad. How cool is that?
You weren't even going to go to college.
Exactly. And then, last season when I got to come back and play mid-season, like, how crazy is that? That does not happen to people. And they even, offered me a spot to transfer back into a school that I had left. I think that shows, how special my relationship was with them and how important, not burning bridges is and being able to build those relationships for a lifetime.
Absolutely. And
that's why hockey is so special, because you do get to do that. And you get to become very close with people because you spend so much time with them. And that is such a gift. Like, I always would try to get very close with our equipment people and our training people and just everything, because you spend so much time with them and they do so much for you. So, like, yeah, you should be able to have a conversation with them about their life too.
Yeah.
They should be your friend, and they were my friend. I still, text them and contact them all the time because I'm very thankful for their role that they played in my life. That's 6 years of my life.
Absolutely. And your dad must be so thankful because here he was sending his little girl to the big city, unbeknownst to what was going to go on this huge college campus with this major D1 college hockey program. And to know that someone was looking out for his little girl must have meant the world to him as well. And that's what the tears were for in the stands that day. Not because you were in the jersey and not because you were on the ice, because somebody was looking out for his little girl and she found the family away from home that she needed so much.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Especially with my teammates too. Being able to be surrounded by, a bunch of very confident and successful women changes you as a person.
These were the role models in your life that you were looking for, not that you didn't even know you needed, right? Because the role model that we have growing up for you wasn't there. And here you get to campus and it's all these incredible women doing incredible things. You're looking up, you're just happy to be there and you're watching it all happen. And they were instrumental for you in that aspect.
Exactly. And it's so cool to, have those relationships now and be able to, I brag about my friends all the time because of the awesome and cool things I get to do. And, a lot of them still play hockey, are going to play in this next Olympics coming up, play in the PWHL, still play college hockey. And, and if they're not still playing hockey, they have, very cool jobs. They coach, they ref, they, do all these things. And, it helps me, it inspires me because they work very hard, and to be around people like that, you are the people that you surround yourself with. And so, it's cool to see them, being involved in the hockey community and giving back in that way. And, that's why I do what I do too, because, it's cool to bring coverage to things that, are often not talked about in hockey. Hockey is a very, in the past has been, a very privileged sport, and it's cool to shed light on things that aren't so perfect.
Right. By sharing your story, you are going to inspire so many that it's okay. And it's okay to be carrying these things. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, do whatever you need to do. But by sharing this story, Olivia, this will be so beneficial for so many people. And from chatting with you and talking with you, I'm gathering that that's kind of what you want your story to be. And we all have things happen to us along the way. They happen, you could say they happen for a reason. Some people believe that, some people don't, but it's your story. It's your story and you own that story. And it sounds like this is what these platforms that you're discovering, right? We'll talk a little bit more about the path that the Gophers and, of course, led you to St. Thomas and a law degree, which, what? A law degree, but all we're doing is talking about hockey. And here is a path that, again, came to you, and now you're realizing, like, this is more than just chatting about hockey and being a goalie and sharing people. This is real life, and it's opening up doors for you to share your story and be an inspiration. And it sounds like you're realizing that that's what your story can do.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, even going back to my early years of college when I started to really find my faith, I was in a place where I was no longer embarrassed about my story at all. I could talk about it openly and freely, and it wouldn't make me emotional. And at that point was where I really was thinking about how can I advocate for other people by telling my story, and how can I help other people? What things can I do? What things can I get involved with? And I think that's, where I'm at right now, is like starting to move and trend in that direction, because it would have been super instrumental for me to hear someone talk about, substance abuse and, living in a home where, that was prevalent, and how that's normal, and how we can get through that, and who we can talk to, and what resources there are available for, kids going through that, or even adults or spouses. And so I think that, in the future is something I'm looking forward to, and looking forward to giving back in that way.
I love that. There's a lot of kids going through a lot of stuff, and your story will mean a difference. Even folks listening today will find comfort in knowing that there's other people out there that have been through it, are in it, going through it. And sports can be an outlet, but they can also be a resource. Look at what that coach did and guide you to the gal at school, and look at what Coach Frost did and all the things. It's like, it's a vehicle. It's good to have those things in your life. So thank you for sharing that piece of your story. And you should be so proud. Your family should be so proud of all the things you've done and what you continue to do. And part of that was getting to play those 4 years at the Gophers and continuing your story. There was more to the story, because thank you, COVID. Thank you, because you got more opportunity to go down the street.
Exactly. So I had a few extra years because I redshirted my freshman year, and then I have a COVID year, so I had 6 years of eligibility.
You're probably the last in line of 6 years of eligibility.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I never thought I'd use them. When I got done with my undergrad, I was like, I think I'm done. I don't really know.
What was your degree in at the
So
U?
my undergrad was in marketing and business law. And
Was law always something in the back of your mind?
yes.
Why?
I always thought that I would go and get my JD after my undergrad. So that was kind of where I was at too. I was like, I don't really want to go play my 5th year because I might go to law school.
Why law?
I was always told by my dad my whole life that I was very good at arguing. I'm very stubborn. I can be very stubborn. And I think it was just something I love to read and write. I love contracts. So it was something that was just kind of came easy to me.
Wow.
I can read and remember things, and I was never a math or science girl, so that was out the window. And so that was, it just kind of fell naturally to me, and I was like, this would be a good path, and I can make enough money to take care of my family. And at that point in my life, that was what I deemed as important, which, now I think about life differently, so I don't, think about that as much. And so that was also another reason why I chose to enter the transfer portal, was because I was like, well, maybe I'll go get my master's degree somewhere. Minnesota didn't have any master's degrees that I was interested at the time. And so, I sat down with Coach Frost, and we talked about it, and I just said, I think this was my last year. And he was like, I understand, I'm graduating, and I was like, would you be upset if I entered the transfer portal? Because if you would, then it's not worth it to me. I don't care enough. I don't even know if I want to play. But I feel like it, maybe. And he encouraged me to do it. He was like, I think you should look around. Like, you never know. And so when I entered the transfer portal, I didn't think I'd get any interest. I didn't have a lot of experience in my undergrad. And I thankfully did, even in the WCHA. And so I went on quite a few visits. The transfer portal was a really weird thing, but it wasn't scary for me because
Still weird.
It's super weird. But it wasn't scary for me because I didn't have any expectations about it. I was like, it might work, and if it doesn't work, it's fine.
Give it a try. Give it a whirl.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. And so that was kind of where I was at. And St. Thomas called me, and it was actually Coach Johnson who had initially called me at the Gophers.
Were you at Target?
No, I wasn't this time. And he called me because he had been, coaching with St. Thomas. He had moved over there my junior year. Okay. And he said, you can come on a visit. And I went on a visit, and we sat and had a meeting. And I said, if you need me, if you want me, I'm here, because you gave me a chance. And if you need help, and I would love to.
See all these people put in your path, Olivia, and they will continue to do so. That will continue to be the case. But here he is in your path again.
And it was very cool. So I got, an awesome experience. I got to go over there and play and get a really, really good master's degree from an awesome school. So that's where I got my Master of Studies in Law from the St. Thomas School of Law. And it was a very hard year. I was in a really big master's program. I was supposed to take 2.5 years, and I did it
in a year?
In a year.
Oh my goodness.
And then I was also...
How did you do that?
I was also playing, starting games, and I thought that it would be easy because in the past I could do homework on a game day and it wouldn't matter because I wasn't starting or anything. Right. And if I was going to play, it was okay. I was still focused, but it was different. And, here it was a lot more pressure because I felt a lot of pressure. Obviously, I put that on myself because I was playing consistently. And it was hard, but it was really good for me learning how to, time management.
Life skill.
Exactly. And so that was really cool. I got done with my master's degree. I loved my time at St. Thomas as well, and the people I was there. It was a different experience because I was the older one.
Mm-hmm. And this is year 5.
Yes, this is year 5. I was the older one. And then I got done with that year, and everybody in your college career will always tell you that getting a job is going to be easy because you are a good candidate. Oh, you played Division I sports. Oh, you have a good degree. And at that point, I was like, wow, now I have my master's degree, and so I got done, and I was like, oh, getting a job's going to be a breeze. Oh my gosh, was I so wrong. And it was really, really hard for me. Couldn't find a job for the life of me.
What did you think you wanted to do? What kind of job were you looking for? At
that point, I was like, I'm going to give myself a year probably, and I'm going to start working. And probably I was working in NCAA compliance and just compliance or something like that because it just fit well with my master's degree. And I was like, I'll go back to law school after that year if it's not exactly what I want to do or, something like that, and go get my JD. And I was working in NCAA compliance at St. Thomas, and they were wonderful to give me that job, but it didn't start till the fall. And I was just interning, and it was very cool. I got a lot of great experience from it. I learned a lot, but I also learned, I think, a lot about myself. I was like, I don't know if I'm a back of house kind of person, and it's hard to connect with somebody in that role too because, you are, a lot of people view you and your job in a different way. They think you're trying to get everybody in trouble, which is not true, obviously, but
compliance.
Yeah.
No one likes compliance people.
Exactly. So I went through that, and I liked it. It was nice, but I was just like, I don't know if this is forever for me. And I still really didn't know what I wanted to do. And Christmas rolled around and I had the chance to go back to the Gophers. So I had a lot of friends still on the team. It was only like 2 months of playoff hockey left. And I was, looking to make possibly a career change at that point. Anyways, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was, not 100%. And so that's actually when I started to like get into doing like short form video and fun stuff like that, just for social media and for myself, for my friends. And so when I went back to U, they have a wonderful media team. It's called Gopher Digital Productions that they do for their students. And I sent them a message and I was just like, hey, I know it's really late in my career. I know I'm older. I would love to work with you guys if possible. I don't know if you'd ever be interested. I know I don't have much time left. And they reached back out to me and they were wonderful. And they were like, absolutely, we would love to have you and we will help you in any way we can. We love to help student athletes. And so that's when I started working with them. And I would do like behind the scenes for baseball, softball, and different sports when the season was over. And that's when I really, I did a game for color as well for Hockey Day. My high school team played in Hockey Day, and they asked me to do color, which was really special. I'd never done anything like that. And I did that, and I just fell in love with it.
And you got the bug. And you got the media bug.
Exactly.
Yep, it bit.
And so that's kind of where it all started. And then it kind of took off from there. And it's been such a blessing to finally find something that I'm very passionate about again. I think it's cheesy. People say, storytelling, but it's true. I love to tell people stories because it's just fun and interesting, and you're able to really learn why people tick and why people do what they do, especially in sports. And that's what I love to do. And so it's been really, really cool. And it was such a blessing to get to transfer back into a place, that I had such deep connection and roots to, and then find, what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life and stay involved in hockey in any way I could. And that's where I'm at right now.
Well, that's amazing. 6 years of eligibility, 2 D1 programs, and a master's degree in law. I mean, the accolades and the credentials continue. And now here you find yourself comfortable in the media scene and wanting to do more and learn more. And it's almost like starting over because there's no degree in this. You didn't go to do any classes. You didn't take any, your degree is not in journalism. It's not in communications even. But here you are, and you found something that you're good at. What has it been like so far to get involved? I mean, the podcast, you did a wonderful job. You're still involved in the hockey scene. You're coaching too. So you're able to kind of combine everything and kind of find your path. And what's interesting in media is there's no clear-cut path, right? Back when I started, you did this, and you did this, and you went to a small market, and then you did this, but now there's so many ways to go, and you are carving your own path. What have you liked most about what you've been able to do so far?
Oh, my goodness. I feel like people always, will chat with me now and be like, how did you get to do this? How did you get to do that? And I'm like, it's all through the awesome people that I love and have connected with in the past. And, I do so many different things, and people will tell you, I'm sure, like not all super glamorous all the time, but that's the best part of it. I'll do like run cameras and stuff for Gopher games and different things like that. And it's really good for me to learn like all the sides of production and all the behind the scenes and the team behind the team, really, truly, that's putting on the show. And that's really cool for me because I was the team on the ice, especially at the U on the women's side. You never see that stuff. And so to be able to be a part of that is really cool. And to bring more eyes and attention to women's hockey is always good, to any hockey, honestly, in my opinion. But it's really cool to be able to break into something that, I never thought I would do. And now I've like recently fell in love with. And when I went back, I actually got a minor in entrepreneurship. I added a minor to my undergrad. So that has been actually really helpful because it kind of showed me like just take a chance on yourself. And that was really where I was at. I was, my dad at first was, I think he was a little iffy. He's like, what are you doing? Like,
What about that law degree?
What about that law degree that you worked so hard on? And I was like, nope.
You'll always have it. Dad,
exactly.
Dad, they can't take it away.
Exactly. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to take a chance on myself and it's going to work because I'm going to make it work. And, it's hard. The hours are crazy and it's, lots of different stuff, but I absolutely love it. I don't want to ever have a day in my life where I feel like, oh, this is hard work. And, and it doesn't feel like that to me. It's fun and it's really cool. And it's cool to have something to get to really improve on. I can watch film just like I could watch film for hockey. I can go back and look at my broadcasts and my interviews and, my podcasts and say, this is what I can improve on next time.
You're getting better every single time you get out. The things that you're doing now are things you would have done as an undergrad. The production piece and running the cameras and understanding how a broadcast comes to life and learning your interview skills. All those things you're learning on the fly, but you're learning them in real time and you're getting better every single time. And I always say it's at bats. It's always reps. The more you do, the better you'll be. And the things that you're able to do are just really carving your own path. And I think that's amazing. And I've been watching you from afar. I think you're doing a great job. And all the people in place are just opportunities and people will come and show themselves and things will happen. And your work ethic and your drive and your passion combined with your story is a recipe for success. So you're just doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very cool. And everything I do, even you mentioned like my coaching, I coach the girls' high school, for Prior Lake and Blake. I do their goalie coaching and I coach with some associations and stuff still. And it's really cool to just still be a part of hockey, still be on the ice and able to tie everything I do in together. I obviously I do my podcast. I do the women's hockey podcast. It helps me stay involved with college NCAA women's hockey. And then I also, I do color for the Gopher women's games, which is really, really fun and really cool. I'm talking about my friends. Yeah. And, I do lots of stuff with Youth Hockey Hub, and I'm always trying to get more involved with, the hockey media world and sports media world. And so it has been really fun, and it's always just about the people you meet along the way. And that's really why I've fallen in love with this. It's just, you always get to meet someone and talk to somebody new, and that's really special to make those connections. And like I said, that's what my hockey career was like, and I think it helped me learn that that's just what I want my life to be like.
Right, and you have such a story to tell and very, very relatable. Where do you see yourself in the next year? Where do you want to see yourself in the next year?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I absolutely love talking hockey. And I would love to see, me continuing with a lot of the things I currently do and just really sticking to them and growing them as well. And, maybe potentially one day, NHL Network and different, things like that. I would absolutely love to be a part of, even working with or for a NHL team or for, international play, Team USA, women's games, men's games.
Yeah, the opportunities are there. Television, radio, hosting, calling the games, all the things.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to keep it open, to keep it very open. And that's, I think what's really worked out best for me is just seeing what opportunities come and being very open to those opportunities and
saying yes.
Yes. And that's the most fun. It's no 2 days are ever the same for me.
Right. Well, you're doing a great job. I've enjoyed our conversation. And I'm excited to see where this path takes you. And I know you will be successful in whatever you choose to do.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for coming on today. Yeah. I appreciate it.